Hi everyone and welcome back to Zach's Game Room. I'm reusing board 1 for my next game session since the players will be exiting the mines. So instead of repeating the same work over again, I want to share with you how I get my art. Hopefully this will be one of many videos covering how I'm building out my Roll20 Toolbox. I'm going to be starting with 3 pieces of art by 2-minute tabletop: the Island Plateau, the Rope Bridge, and the Rocky Highlands. If you haven't seen his art before, I'm going to post a link to his Patreon page. He does a lot of really good work, and he is well worth spending $1 or $2 a month to support. From the rope bridge, we're going to get these cliffs with the water around them. So I'm using my rectangle tool to get a big chunk of it, copying, pasting it onto its own layer, and hiding the source image. And I'm coming back in with my eraser tool, setting the opacity to 100% and getting rid of all the stuff that I don't want, namely the rock face on the other side of the water, the smooth edges around the outside of the image, those hard corners, and I turned up the spacing on that tool, and that gives it kind of a jittery look around the outside, like it's skipping along. I just put a black background in so you can really see the edge there. And you see how it's got those little wavy dots, almost like the computer is lagging? That's the spacing setting. So then I go back to my eraser tool, I set the opacity to 50%, clean up the edges, and this is giving it a see-through effect on the image, which means it will blend in with other images better. So I've cleaned it up to the point where I want it to be. I'm going to take that image, copy it again, paste it into its own document, get rid of that white background, crop it to the size of the picture. Now I want to get the water to be filled out a little bit more. So I come over to my Island Plateau map and I just grab a chunk of the water off the coast there, copy it, paste it into the image that we're working on now. At this point it looks rough. It's got that hard, smooth edge and nothing quite works. But once we resize it and we use that same half opacity eraser tool on it, it's going to blend together nicely. So I go to my scaling tool, make it nice and big, rotate it around to where it needs to be, get my eraser tool out. Set the opacity to 50%, and first I pull the cliffs to the front, put them on top of the water, and trace the line where the water's going to meet the cliffs. Then I switch them back. I put the water back on top again. Then I go back and clean it all up. And you can see just with that one little bit, setting the opacity to 50% on the eraser tool, that dark water with the hard edge from the other image blends really well into the cliff face and that kind of lighter colored water that is there. So let's go back to our other image and grab another cliff, just right from the other side of the bridge. Rectangle tool, copy, paste into its own layer, hide the other layer, grab my eraser tool, get rid of what I don't want. And you see those dots? See how it looks like it's skipping along? That is the spacing setting. And I probably should have turned it down at this point, because it's a little bit rough to cut out a lot of the picture when that's turned up there. So I rough out the edges, set my opacity back to 50%, come around, hit the edges again, get them kind of see-through. Grab some water again, move my image to its own document, crop it down, paste my little chunk of water in there, rotate it around so it looks right, make it nice and big so it fits in there and fills up all the edges that I want it to get, and go right back to that eraser tool. First finding the path where we want to take it off the cliffs, erasing that little bit of line out there, then bringing the water back on top of the cliffs and going back and blending it all in. Now you might be tempted to use the blur tool to try and do this, but you would be mistaken. Don't do it. Use the opacity at 50%, make it see-through, and that makes all the colors really blend into each other. So now we have 2 cliffs, both overlooking water. They're both on their own layers. I'm going to export them to a PNG file, and then I'm going to drag them into that first image to check them out. As you can see, those edges, look at the edges, how they blend together really nicely. That's because they're kind of semi-see-through. They're half transparent. And while this doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do on this map, you can see how on some other map it'll be nice and green and crisp. So the next thing we're going to do is come to this Rocky Highlands map and get that road. So I'm going to use my lasso tool, and I want to get the green but not the rocks. So I'm just kind of roughly tracing it out, getting the green but not the rocks, and giving myself a nice rounded edge on the end of that road. Copy, paste onto a new layer, hide the original layer, get my eraser tool out, make it nice and big so it's easy to work with, and smooth out those edges again. 50% opacity, I still have the spacing turned up a little bit too high, and just clean up the edges. What you don't want to see are hard lines. You want to basically feather away at this until those are gone. Now the brush I'm using, and this comes with GIMP, kind of feathers the edge of the tool anyway, so even when you set the opacity to 100%, it doesn't have a harsh line to it anymore when you use that brush. So you can kind of go in there and clean it up, get the big roughing out done. And then come back with the tool on a lower opacity, back down low. Now, the very ends of this road, I'm going to hit extra hard because I want to be able to overlap multiple copies of this image together. And when I layer the ends on each other, if both ends are very faint, they line up nicely. So let's copy, paste it into that image, take a look where it fits, move it around to a couple different places, see how it blends in. And again, on this map, maybe doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you can see how that'll blend in on some other map. So copy, paste it into its own document, shrink the document down to the right size, export it as a PDF, not a PDF, export it as a PNG file. Now I make a point to say export it as a PNG file because you want to preserve the opacity. You want to preserve that see-through nature. If you export it as a JPEG or some other file type, you can lose that and it'll make the background white or black or whatever color it might be, but it won't be see-through, and you need to save that part. It's very important. So now we have some cliff faces overlooking water. We have a nice road. Let's go back to our rope bridge and get some cliffs that don't have any water on them. So I've flipped the map over here because one side looks like it's got a little ramp. Same idea, circle that out, get out my eraser, 100% opacity to clean it up. And I just want to keep those little steps. I want to get that light part out. So I'm coming in there, erasing it out, trying to follow some of the lines that you see in that art, like the little lines in the cliff face. Turn the opacity down, throw a black background in so I can see. And you can really see on this one the difference a dark background makes. You can see those parts where I didn't erase it enough. You can go back and really hit those and get them out of there. So that one looks pretty good. Nice little cliff face, funny little shape. It's got a bulge in it, so we can maybe use that as a endpoint or to finish up a corner. Make sure there's no straight lines in it. Copy, paste it on the original image. Just move it around. Let's see where it fits. Looks pretty good in that top corner. Let's flip it around. Put it in the other corner. Make sure that bits are blending. What I'm looking for is the stone blending to stone, grass blending into grass. Making sure that nothing stands out to my eye as being odd in the way it blends. Looks good. Paste it into its own document. Crop the document down to the right size. Export as a PNG. Let's go grab one more of those cliff faces. And let's just grab the one from the other side. Just a smaller piece this time, I think. Get the lasso tool out. Roughly circle out what we're interested in. Copy, paste onto a new layer with a dark background. Go in there with the eraser tool again. Rough up the edges. And this is 90% of what you're doing, is coming in with an eraser tool at a 50% opacity and just smoothing out the edges of what you want. Now at this point I took the feathering back down, or rather I took the spacing back down. And it takes a little bit more effort to rough the edges up. See how I kind of wiggle my mouse around? But overall, I'm on the fence whether that is the easier way to rough the edges up or not. And I'm using GIMP, I'm not using Photoshop. If I was using Photoshop and on a drawing tablet, this would be very different because I'd have a pen. So there we have our little cliff edge, copy paste into its own document, save it. And let's grab one more cliff edge. I think the one right by the bridge. Something kind of long and skinny, I think will do nicely to round it out. Lasso tool. Come in with 100% opacity on the eraser. Get rid of the bits you don't want. Follow the lines in the art. And you see here I left in a little bit of the light colored water on the edge there. That might turn out to be a mistake. I'm not certain. That might stand out oddly. But I can always drop a tree or something like that on top of it. Hide it when I'm sticking it in Roll20. So that looks pretty good. Copy paste into its own document, crop it down to the right side. Now I have 3 cliff faces. So from 3 pieces of art, we have created a total of 6 set pieces for Roll20. And on our next couple of videos, we'll see how we can put them together and build some new boards. Thanks everyone for watching. If you made it this far, I hope you like, subscribe, and leave me a comment. Let me know if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in seeing. And in particular, let me know if you want some more detail about how I capture those images and cut them down to what specific settings I use on GIMP. I said before, this is a lot easier if you have a tablet and you're using Photoshop, because then you can have like those touch-sensitive pens. But I don't have any of that. I'm using a mouse and keyboard and free software to do it. So, hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.